Good morning 10th class. Today we will start with our next topic, that is pollination. So firstly, what is pollination? It is a mechanism by which the pollen grains which are formed inside pollen sac are transferred from anther which is male reproductive part, transferred from anther to stigma of carpel, which is female reproductive part. As I have discussed in previous video, in which we are showing the stamen, which consists of filament and anther, and the anther is bilobed, which contains pollen grains. This is anther. This is the structure of stamen, which is male reproductive part, and the structure of carpel is like, which consists of uppermost part, that is stigma, tube-like structure, that is style, and this bottom structure, rounded structure, which is known as ovary, which contain eggs. So pollination is the mechanism by which the pollen grains which are produced inside the anther are transferred from anther to the receptive stigma of carpel. This mechanism is known as pollination. Next thing is that pollination is essential process because it helps in fertilization in plants. And next, that is types of pollination. So mainly pollination is of two types. First one is self-pollination and second one is cross-pollination. Pollination also requires various agents for transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma, and these agents will be wind, water, insects, birds and bats. These are mainly 5 agents: wind, water, insect, birds and bats, which help in pollination. Now, types of pollination, which is self-pollination and cross-pollination. Firstly, we will discuss about self-pollination. Self-pollination is a method or a mechanism in which pollen grains are transferred from anther to, these are the pollen grains which transfer from anther to stigma of same flower on the other flower borne on same plant. It means that the plant remains same, such as like that the plant here one flower, here one flower, here one flower. So self-pollination occurs like that. And one most important thing is that in self-pollination, in which pollen grains are transferred from anther to stigma of same flower, that flower will be bisexual, mainly bisexual, because in bisexual flower male and female reproductive parts are present in the same flower, or the self pollination will be occur on same plant in which one flower consists of male part and another flower consists of female part. So self pollination occurs on the same plant which bears many flowers. Self pollination may occur on the same flower or may on the another flower of same plant. And second type is cross pollination. What cross pollination involves? Cross pollination means that transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma from one plant flower to another plant flowers of same species. It means that here this is one plant and this is second plant. Here this plant also bear flower and this plant also bear flower. So cross pollination occurs in this way, that these plant and these plant are of same species, but in this case the plant are two. One plant produce pollen grains and another plant produces female reproductive part which is produce egg. So pollen grains are transferred from one flower of one plant and other flower of next plant. Next come the difference between self-pollination and cross-pollination. So first is self-pollination. It is the transfer of pollen grains from anther to the stigma of same flower. Means flower will be same and pollen grains of the same flower will be transferred to the stigma of same flower. In cross-pollination, it is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower. Means here the flowers will be two and these two flowers will be born on different plants. Next difference is that it does not require an external agency for transfer of pollen grains. Means in the self-pollination, because pollen grains are transferred on the same flower, so there doesn't need any external factor, any external agency. That means we don't require wind, water, air, insect, bats for transfer of pollen grains. But in cross-pollination, the pollen grains are transferred from one plant flower to another plant flower. So here in cross-pollination, we need external agencies such as wind, water, insect, bats, birds. Next difference is that such bisexual flower produce small number of pollen grains, because in this self-pollination, pollen grains are transferred on the same flower, so the pollen grains will be produced in less number. And in cross-pollination, pollen grains are produced in large number because they have to transfer from one plant to another plant. Next difference is that it does not bring variations, and cross pollination brings about number of variations.